Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and on this episode we're doing It Came From the Network. The topic of this It Came From the Network, WWF SummerSlam 1989, which I believe is the second annual SummerSlam. If you haven't seen my shows before, I rate everything here on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Let's jump right into it because we have a lot to cover. First up, we get the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, going up against the Hart Foundation in a non-title match. There's some weird decisions on this pay-per-view, which we'll talk about at the end. I think this may have been my favorite, or if not, one of the two favorite matches of the night, of the card. You got two classic tag teams. Arn and Tully weren't a tag team for a tremendously long amount of time, but with what they did, they're still remembered to this day. The Hart Foundation still talked about to this day. This was a really good opening match. This is what an opening match should be. 4 absolute legends of wrestling. The Brainbusters pick up the win here. I'm giving this a 4. No idea why this just wasn't a tag team title match, especially in the era where we only had 4 pay-per-views a year. It really should have been. Coming from that, we go to a Dusty Rhodes interview in the back, which is pretty cool. Dusty interviews are always good. Leads us right into a match, Dusty Rhodes versus the Honky Tonk Man. And we're kind of at the point where Honky Tonk Man was kind of losing his luster, kind of just floating around in the mid-card. Dusty Rhodes, I don't think they ever understood what to do, but he had an incredible connection. Anyone that's watched Dusty Rhodes will say that, about him, that his connection with the fans, no matter where he was placed on the card, he always gave it his all, and he always connected to them, and that's why he's so beloved and one of the most beloved wrestlers of all time. Dusty picks up the win here. I'm giving this match a 4. Just watching Dusty work and how he controls the crowd is always going to get a high rating from me. Honky Tonk Man, underrated wrestler in his own right. I thought this was a really solid match. Watching these first 2 matches, I had high expectations for the show, but we'll talk about that more as we go down. Next up, we get an interview with Demolition and Hacksaw Jim Duggan, which leads us right into the next match of the evening. Kind of weird. Some of the interviews are right before the matches for the people. Some of them are well before it. I think there's 1 or 2 that are after. But it's kind of funny that this was placed here. After coming out of that, we get a match, Mr. Perfect versus the Red Rooster, which, if you think about it, the rumor has long been that Terry Taylor and Curt Hennig both got hired at the same time, and there were 2 gimmicks. One was Mr. Perfect, the other was the Red Rooster. And because of Terry Taylor's attitude, he was given the Red Rooster. And Mr. Perfect, Curt Hennig, got Mr. Perfect. We see how that ends up being. Mr. Perfect obviously has a much better career than the Red Rooster. I would like to go to an alternate universe where the roles were flipped. See if Terry Taylor could have had a better career. See if Hennig could have pulled off being the Red Rooster. This match I thought was a little brief. I think it was just around 3 minutes. Mr. Perfect picks up the win here. I'm giving this a 3. If this could have been just a tad bit longer, I think it would have been a much better match. I think it would have been in competition for my favorite match of the night, just with knowing the 2 talents involved. Alas, that wasn't meant to be. And again, we'll talk about something later when we talk about overall on the card. Next up, we get a Ravishing Rick Rude interview, followed by a 6-man tag match, Rick Martel and Jacques and Raymond Rougeau versus Tito Santana and the Rockers, Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels. I like this match too. I thought this was a solid match. Probably my second or third favorite match of the night. From here on, the card kind of went downhill, but there was a few of these first 4 or 5 matches that I thought were rather good. Martel, the Rios, the Rockers, Tito Santana, all really good wrestlers. So watching this out of context, they're going to give you a great story in the ring. Martel and the Rougeau brothers pick up the win here. I'm giving this match a 4. Like I said, it's one of my favorite matches of the night, and it's a really fun match to watch, and it's one that holds up well. I would say on a pure holding up from basically 33 years ago, or almost 33 years ago, to now, this match holds up better than the other matches. There are matches I like more, Dusty Rhodes and Honky Tonk and the Brainbusters and Heart Foundation, but this match more closely resembles what wrestling is like now than any other match on the card. Again, Martel and the Rougeaus pick up the win. I'm giving it a 4. Next, we get a recap of the Ultimate Warrior and Rick Rude's feud. Then we get a bonkers Ultimate Warrior interview, which they all were. They all were insane. None of them made any goddamn sense. Which leads us into the Ultimate Warrior versus Ravishing Rick Rude. This was the longest match of the night. And Rude did his absolute best to get a good match out of the Ultimate Warrior. Something that very few people could do. Famously, Savage had a great match at a WrestleMania with him. Hogan and him had a great match, but I think that match is more spectacle than the quality of the match itself. Warrior is so limited, and it's insane how over he was and how much the fans were behind him. His promos were terrible. His in-ring was terrible. The only things he had going for him, he had a fantastic look, and his energy was insane. Other than that, he was trash. He was a total, and I don't mean to speak badly of the Dead, but he was just one, in my opinion, one of the worst big-time wrestlers there's ever been. Roddy Piper comes down to the ring. Him and Rude were feuding, which, again, with this being one of only 4 pay-per-views in the year, why would you not have that be the match? Ultimate Warrior picks up the win after Piper distracts Rude. I'm giving this a 2. Rude tried his best, but Warrior's limitations made this match just not a fun one. Coming off of that, we roll into Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Demolition, Axe and Smash at the time, versus Andre the Giant and the Twin Towers, which are the Big Boss Man and Hakeem. There's a couple cringe things where they talk about taking out the Twin Towers. And I know it was 13, 15 years or 12 or 13 years before the real Twin Towers went down, but it kind of, even hearing that kind of, for someone of my age and anyone that lived through that, it kind of makes you cringe when you hear stuff like that a little bit. I know they didn't mean it badly. It is what it is, because that's the name of the team. This was not a good match. Andre was very limited at this point. I don't think he was with the WWF much longer after this. Boss Man Duggan, Hakeem, Demolition, I've seen him have better matches than this. This, to me, it didn't feel right on a SummerSlam. When, again, I keep hearkening back to this, we only had 4 pay-per-views a year at the time. This felt like a throwaway match. If you would have had something like this, and it's obvious it's to get really popular acts like Duggan, Demolition, Andre the Giant on the card, but it's still, to me, it had nothing. And I've seen better from everybody in the match. Duggan and Demolition pick up the win. I'm giving this another 2. Another match that was kind of underwhelming in my opinion. Coming off of that, we go to a backstage interview with Ted DiBiase and Virgil. Again, in all these interviews, they're talking about their match. We're not going to cover them much. I mean, everybody that did an interview, sans the Ultimate Warrior, did a great job on their interviews. Again, DiBiase and Virgil did a great job here. We go back to the ring. Rugged Ronnie Garvin is announced to be the announcer for the next match, which gives us Greg the Hammer Valentine versus Hercules. Garvin and Valentine were in a feud at this point. Much like I said with Rude and Piper, Why not make Garvin and Valentine the match? Why go through Valentine and Hercules? Hercules, another guy that was immensely over, and good wrestler, really good wrestler. Valentine's a good wrestler too. This match kind of fell flat again. I don't know what it was. Something about this back half of the card. The matches just felt very lackluster in my opinion. Valentine picks up the win. Afterwards, we see Garvin and him getting a little thing because Garvin would have announced Hercules as a winner when he really wasn't. Garvin ends up punching out Valentine, which Garvin was known as Hands of Stone. I'm giving this a 2. I just didn't like it. Again, it felt like after the 6-man with the Rockers and the Rios versus Tito Santana, the Rios and Rick Martel versus Tito Santana and the Rockers, felt like after that the card fell off the rails and never got back on its feet. Next, we get one of the most, out of all of the backstage interviews, this was the most original one because there was a cauldron there. We had a Sensational Sherry, Macho Man Randy Savage, and Zeus talking about the main event. After that, we go into Ted DiBiase versus Superfly Jimmy Snuka. This was a solid match. I thought this was good. Out of the back half of the show, this is my favorite match of the back half. I thought it was good. Snuka wasn't what he was in his prime, but he was still good enough to carry a good match. DiBiase, one of the great workers of this generation. The only thing that gives it a little bit of a negative to me is DiBiase wins a match by a countout. Other than that, I thought it was a good match. I'm going to give this match a 3. DiBiase and Snuka, I thought it could have been better if they would have had a better finish. But, again, like I said, probably the best match of the last half of the card. After that, we get a backstage interview with Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake. Talk about their match that's going to come up next. Which brings us back to the ring. The genius Lanny Poffo is saying a poem, hyping up Savage and Zeus and cutting down Beefcake and Hogan. Leads us to Beefcake and Hogan with Miss Elizabeth, where Savage and Zeus with Sensational Sherry. Zeus was terrible. And again, I hate to talk bad about the dead. I love him in Friday. I thought he was an awesome character actor. I like a lot of movies that he's in. Terrible wrestler. A lot of this match was either headlocks or bear hugs. It was very boring. Another long match. The Warrior and Rude was the longest match of the night, which I thought was a strange decision. This was another long match, but it made more sense with it being the main event and being that you have two of the biggest stars of WWF at the time, Hogan and Savage. Zeus coming off of the No Holds Barred tie-in. This match was terrible. It wasn't good. I've seen Savage, Beefcake, and Hogan all have better matches. Zeus, even, dare I say, his match where he was the Z Gangster in WCW was better. Not by much, but better. It kind of didn't feel special. So in a night that we had when the WWF still only had 3 championships, we had one actual championship match, Warrior vs. Rude for the Intercontinental title. Other than that, the Tag Championship was in a non-title match, and the World Championship was in a tag match that really didn't mean much of anything. Hogan and Beefcake pick up the win, obviously. I'm giving this one a 1. Probably or definitely my least favorite match of the card. Overall, my feelings, and I just mentioned one of them. Only one title was on the line for, again, I'm beating a drum here, one of the 4 pay-per-views they had that year. If I would have shelled down, I believe at the time it was $30 or $40, I don't really remember. Whatever it was, if it was $30, even if it was $15, if I would have shelled out $15 to watch this, I want to see stuff that I can't see. I want to see the titles on the line. I don't want to see a non-title match. I don't want to see filler matches. I do want to see my favorite wrestlers. So maybe you could have put Martel and Tito Santana in a singles match, the Rockers and Rios against each other in a tag match. Maybe say that's a number 1 contender match. With what they did with Mr. Perfect and the Red Rooster, that could have been left off altogether. I mean, there's a lot of what feels like filler on this card, and a lot of just treading water, in my opinion. Overall, the sum of the parts is less than the couple matches that I thought were good. I give this a 2. I really wouldn't recommend going back and watching this unless you want to watch a main event just to see a spectacle for Zeus. Yeah, I might go back. I would recommend watching Arn and Tully, the Brainbusters versus the Hart Foundation. Dusty versus the Honky Tonk Man just to see Dusty Rhodes being Dusty Rhodes. And the 6-man with Rick Martel and the Rios versus Tito Santana and the Rockers. Other than that, you could skip the rest of this card. It's a lot of garbage with three pieces of good and a really bad rest of the show. This would be like having 3 awesome bites of steak and then the rest of the steak is rancid and not the band. But overall, again, I'm going to give this a 2. It just wasn't a fun show for me. I didn't feel the heat, as the tagline was for the show. With all that being said, please like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't subscribed before. If you made it all the way to the end, let me know you made it to the end by putting down here in the comments Debo for Zeus, because Debo was his character in Friday, which I liked a heck of a lot more than I liked this show. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this is another episode of It Came From the Network.